$600,000. That's what a major hotel chain paid the federal government for a wireless attack it ran on its own paying guests. This is Wireless and Mobile Security, Security Plus Objective 4.1, and it decides whether the network in your pocket is actually yours. Here's how they did it. In 2014, at the Opryland Resort in Nashville, staff sent deauthentication frames to knock guests off their own phone hotspots, forcing everyone onto the hotel network at up to $1,000 a device. The FCC called it illegal jamming, and that exact trick has a free version an attacker runs on you at a coffee shop. By the end, you'll know the 4 wireless settings that decide whether it works on you, and one of them is completely free and ships turned off.
I'm Erica, and let's start with why wireless is different from everything else in security. On a wired network, an attacker has to physically plug a cable in somewhere. Wi-Fi sprays your data through the air in every direction, through the walls, out into the parking lot. Anybody sitting there with a cheap antenna is already touching your wire. No cut cable, no picked lock, no camera catches them, just a laptop in a parked car quietly pulling packets out of the air. That's the whole problem in one sentence.
Kai here, and let's put a number on how easy that first move is. A deauthentication frame is a tiny management packet, and the plain Wi-Fi your router shipped with never checks whether it's genuine. So an attacker spoofs one frame and your laptop drops the connection instantly. Send a few of those a second and you are simply off the network, on command, whenever they want.
Hey, this is Tiffany, and I bust wireless myths for a living. The version going around online says a strong Wi-Fi password keeps you safe on public Wi-Fi. On the open network at the airport, there is no password at all, so there's nothing scrambling the air between your phone and the router. That myth is flat busted before you even sit down.
And that opens the door to the 2 attacks CompTIA really wants you to tell apart. First one is the rogue access point. That's any access point nobody signed off on, quietly plugged into the network. Somebody brings a cheap little router from home for better signal in the back office, and now there's an unmonitored door straight into the corporate network.
The nastier cousin is the evil twin. The attacker stands up an access point broadcasting the exact same network name as the real one, the same SSID. Your phone connected to that name before, so it happily reconnects to the imposter without asking you a thing. Now every site you open runs through the attacker first.
So this whole objective is really one defense stack aimed at exactly that. Encryption strong enough that the air isn't readable. Enterprise authentication so a fake network can't fake your identity. And mobile device management so the phone in your pocket follows the rules even when it's off your network. 3 layers, and we build them one at a time.
Wait, so the real fix for a fake network is proving who you are, not hiding the network's name?
That's exactly it. Hiding the name buys you almost nothing, and Tiffany's going to take that myth apart later. Identity is the lever that actually moves.
Here's the question that sits under every public Wi-Fi video, and it steers everything we're about to do. Coffee shop Wi-Fi shows the padlock in my browser. Am I actually safe? Short answer, the padlock protects each website you visit, but it does nothing for the network itself. And today you'll see the exact spot where that gap bites. Hold that thought, because the answer comes in layers. And if you want to drill Objective 4.1 until it's automatic, there are free practice quizzes and study notes waiting at certs.professorerica.com, laid out in exam order. Let's start where every wireless breach starts, the encryption on the network itself. Encryption is the first layer, and this is where a real breakthrough lives. For years, the standard was WPA2, and in 2017, 2 researchers at KU Leuven, Matthew Van Hoof and Frank Peasons, broke it at the protocol level with an attack called KRACK. Not by guessing your password, by abusing the handshake every WPA2 device performs.
Let me define that handshake, because the whole thing turns on it. When your phone joins a protected network, it runs a 4-way handshake, 4 short messages that prove both sides know the password and then install the encryption key for the session. KRACK forced a device to reinstall a key it was already using, and that reset let the attacker start decrypting traffic. The password itself was never the target.
And here's why that mattered so much. KRACK wasn't one vendor's bug you could patch and forget. It got a whole block of numbers, CVE 2017, 13077 through 13088, because it hit the standard itself. Every WPA2 device on Earth was in scope on day one. You don't fix that with a better password. You fix it by fixing the protocol.
Before we get to the fix, let me show you what these networks actually look like from an attacker's seat in our own lab. One command lists every network in range and, crucially, the security each one is running.
That open network at the top is the airport nightmare Tiffany named earlier. No key at all. But look at the difference between the other two, because WPA3 is the real answer to KRACK. It throws out the old Handshake and uses a new one called SAE, Simultaneous Authentication of Equals, nicknamed Dragonfly.
And the older networks still lean on a pre-shared key, a PSK, which just means one password shared by everyone on the network. Whoever has the password can, with the right capture, work toward your traffic offline, at their own pace, on their own machine. That offline part is the quiet killer.
Which is the exact thing SAE kills. With the old pre-shared key, an attacker grabs one handshake and then guesses passwords a billion at a time offline, no network needed. SAE makes every single guess require a fresh live exchange with the access point. You can't take it home. That collapses offline dictionary attacks from limitless to basically one slow guess at a time.
Let me put the two side by side so the exam version sticks, because CompTIA tests this as a direct compare. WPA2 runs the four-way handshake KRACK broke, shares one password, has no forward secrecy, and treats protected management frames as optional. WPA3 uses the SAE handshake, blocks offline guessing, builds in forward secrecy so a stolen key can't unlock yesterday's traffic, and requires protected management frames. That last one is the free setting from the cold open.
Protected management frames come from the 802.11w amendment, and they're worth the whole cold open story. They sign the little management frames, including deauthentication frames. Once they're on, a spoof deauth is simply ignored, so the hotel trick and the coffee shop trick both stop working. Mandatory in WPA3, optional in WPA2, and constantly left off.
So is there any real reason not to just force WPA3 only and walk away?
One honest reason: compatibility. An older laptop or a smart plug that only speaks WPA2 literally can't join a WPA3 only network. So most gear runs a transition mode that accepts both, which is practical but keeps the weaker door propped open. In a high security site, you go WPA3 only and replace the stragglers. At home, you weigh it against that 10-year-old printer.
And there's one more setting that undoes all of this, no matter how good your encryption is. Wi-Fi Protected Setup, WPS. That little push-button pairing feature. Its 8-digit PIN is a disaster, because the router checks it in two halves, and the last digit is only a checksum. That drops the guessing from 100 million combinations to about 11,000. A tool called Reaver has walked through that since 2011 in hours. Turn WPS off, or your beautiful WPA3 is guarding a door with a broken lock.
So encryption is layer 1, and WPA3 plus protected management frames minus WPS is the whole exam answer. But encryption only protects a network you actually trust. Next, we build a fake one in the lab and watch how easily people hand their logins to it. One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think.
Let's make the evil twin real, because seeing it beats defining it. Everything here runs on our own gear in an isolated lab, our own devices, no one else's network. The point is purely defensive. Once you've watched exactly how the trap gets built, you'll never quietly walk into one again.
And the recipe is only 2 ingredients, and you already met both. Step 1. Clone the network name. The attacker broadcasts an access point with the identical SSID as the real coffee shop Wi-Fi. Step 2. Run a deauth against the real one so nearby phones drop and go hunting for that familiar name again.
And in the lab, you can literally watch both networks show up at once. Same name, 2 access points.
Notice the numbers because they're the tell. The real one is weaker and encrypted. The twin is stronger and open, sitting right next to it on the same channel. Phones tend to grab the strongest signal with a known name, so the victim rolls onto the fake without a single tap. Then comes the shove. That shove is the deauth we saw in scene 2. In the lab, against our own client, a single burst kicks it off the real access point so it reconnects to the loud twin instead.
So the victim never taps a thing, and their own phone does the betraying.
Exactly, and here's where the real theft happens. The moment your phone joins, the twin throws up a captive portal. That's the login page you already trust, the one real public networks use to make you accept the terms or enter a room number. Except this one is a fake the attacker designed. It asks for a username and a password, maybe your email or your room number, and every keystroke goes straight into their log. It looks exactly like the real thing because a captive portal is just a web page and anyone can copy a web page.
And when subtlety isn't the goal, there's the blunt cousin, jamming. Instead of quietly clooning you, an attacker floods the frequency with noise or blasts continuous deauth and disassociation frames until nobody can stay connected at all. That's a denial of service on the air itself. It's louder and easier to spot, but on an old network without protected management frames, it flatly works, and it's the exact family the hotel used.
And this isn't nation-state gear anymore. A cheap handheld radio tool the size of a candy bar can scan, capture, and misbehave across a fistful of protocols. When the attack toys cost $40 and slip into a pocket, hoping nobody's targeting you stops being a plan.
Which brings me to the 2 myths people reach for instead of doing this right. Myth 1. Hide your network name and you're invisible. Busted. A hidden SSID still beacons constantly so any scanner sees it in seconds. You gain almost nothing and just annoy your own users. Myth 2. MAC address filtering locks strangers out. Also busted. Those hardware addresses ride in the clear in every single frame, so an attacker sniffs an allowed one and clones it in about a minute. Neither trick is encryption. Neither one is real security, and leaning on them just means you skipped the setting that actually mattered.
So both of those are theater, not a lock.
Right, so here's what actually protects you out there. Verify the exact network name with the staff before you join. Get suspicious the second a login page appears out of nowhere. Run a VPN so your traffic is encrypted even on a hostile network. And for anything sensitive, prefer your cellular connection because it isn't exposed to that fake access point at all. One tell saves people constantly. A real coffee shop almost never asks for your actual email password to get online. So the moment a portal wants your real account login, that's your cue to walk.
And notice the theme. Every real fix here is about identity and encryption, never about hiding, which is exactly the jump businesses make next, from one shared password to giving every single user their own verified identity on the network.
Layer 2 is authentication, and it's the jump from a home network to a real business network. At home, everyone types the same Wi-Fi password. That's fine for 4 people. Picture that in an office of 400, where one person leaves every week, and each one knew the single password.
That shared model is what CompTIA calls WPA personal, built on the pre-shared key we already met. One secret, shared by all. And it has a brutal failure mode. When someone quits, they still know the password, so to truly cut them off, you'd have to change it and re-enter it on every device in the building. Almost nobody does, so the old password lingers for years.
The enterprise answer is to give every user their own identity, and the framework that does it is 802.1x. It has 3 roles, and the exam loves to name them. The supplicant is your device asking to get on. The authenticator is the switch or access point at the door, and the authentication server is the brain that actually says yes or no.
And that brain is almost always a radius server, humming in a rack somewhere on the network, Radius is the AAA backend, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Memorize its ports because CompTIA asks. UDP 1812 for authentication, UDP 1813 for accounting. The access point never decides anything itself. It just relays your credentials to Radius and enforces the verdict.
And the language they speak inside that exchange is EAP, the Extensible Authentication Protocol. EAP is a flexible envelope, and the method inside is what you pick. EAP-TLS is the gold standard because it uses certificates on both sides, so the server proves it's real and your device proves it's real. Protected EAP and EAP-TLS instead wrap a password login inside a secure tunnel. That mutual check is the quiet hero of this whole episode, because a fake network has no valid certificate to show, so it collapses before it can ask you for a single thing.
Let me show what a certificate-based client config actually looks like, because it makes the whole thing concrete. No shared Wi-Fi password anywhere in here.
Now watch the payoff versus the home model, side by side, because this is the exam's favorite compare. Personal is one password, easy to set up, but everyone shares the secret, a lever keeps it, and there's no per-user identity. Enterprise gives every user their own login, lets you revoke exactly one person without touching anyone else, logs through Radius who connected and when, and can use certificates that beat passwords outright. That accounting log is also your audit trail.
There's one more part of 4.1 that lives before any of this, and it's the physical side. Where do you even put the access points? That's the site survey. You walk the building measuring real signal, then build a heat map, a color picture of coverage laid over the floor plan. Green where it's strong, red in the dead zones. It's how you place access points so there aren't weak spots for people to complain about, and it's also how you spot an evil twin or a rogue access point that doesn't belong on your map.
This is the part people ask me about most, so let me bring in someone who knows wireless attacks and enterprise defense cold. She's on the line now. Professor Grant, straight question. On a real corporate network, what actually stops the evil twin we just built?
Great question, and the honest answer is server validation. With certificate-based enterprise Wi-Fi, your device is set to trust one specific server certificate. A twin can copy the name all day, but it can't produce that server's private certificate, so a properly set up client just won't connect.
So the certificate does the thing a human can't, which is tell the real network from a perfect-looking fake.
Exactly. People can't eyeball a difference between two networks, both named coffee shop, and they shouldn't have to. The certificate check is math, not judgment.
So it's certificate plus protected management frames, and the twin is dead on both moves?
Dead on both. Thanks for having me on. Build those two and the whole evil twin playbook just stops working.
That's the one to carry, and thank you, Professor. Certificates plus protected management frames, and the twin dies at the door. So that's the network handled. But half of Objective 4.1 isn't the network at all. It's the device in your pocket, and that's next.
The second half of 4.1 walks out the door in everyone's pocket. Company email, client files, and passwords now live on a phone that rides home, joins random coffee shop networks, and gets left in an airport seat. So how does a company keep control of a device it may not even own?
The answer is Mobile Device Management, the MDM console. It pushes and enforces policy on every enrolled phone. Require a passcode, force encryption, control which apps are allowed, and if a device is lost, wipe it remotely from a dashboard. It can even go conditional, blocking a phone from company email entirely until that phone proves it's patched and compliant. Instead of trusting each person to be careful, the rules are enforced from the center.
And you can verify what it's actually enforcing, which is the part I care about. Not a promise on a slide, the real setting on the real device checked from the admin side.
Two of those controls carry the most exam weight. Full device encryption scrambles everything at rest, so a lost or stolen phone is a paperweight instead of a breach. And containerization splits the phone in two, a walled work container separate from personal apps and photos. The company can wipe just the work side and never touch your family pictures.
So it wipes the work half and leaves my vacation photos alone. That's the part people never believe until they see it.
Exactly right, and it's why employees tolerate management at all. Now the ways these devices actually connect, because each radio is its own attack surface. Cellular, the mobile network itself. Wi-Fi, everything we just covered. Bluetooth, short-range pairing. And NFC, near field, the tap-to-pay range of a couple centimeters. Every one of those is a door, and CompTIA expects you to know the threats on each.
And don't wave off NFC just because it's close range. In a relay attack, one device captures your tap and another replays it a moment later somewhere else, so short range doesn't mean safe. The practical fix is a phone that only talks NFC when it's unlocked and you meant to, which is exactly the kind of rule management can enforce for you. Bluetooth has two named attacks the exam always wants, and the names almost rhyme. Bluejacking sends unsolicited messages to a nearby device, more nuisance than disaster. Bluesnarfing is the dangerous one, actually stealing data, contacts, messages, files off a device over Bluetooth. Jacking pushes junk at you. Snarfing steals from you.
And the two threats people bring on themselves, which I see constantly. Sideloading, installing apps from outside the official store, which skips every security check the store runs. And jailbreaking or rooting, tearing off the manufacturer's restrictions to grab full control. Both feel powerful. Both hand an attacker a device with its seatbelts cut. A sideloaded app that promised free movies can quietly read every text you get. And a jailbroken phone stops receiving the security updates that patch the next big flaw, so it rots more dangerous by the week.
And you can feel all of this the second you pick up your own phone. One little slab holding your bank, your email, your photos, connecting 6 different ways at once.
Which raises the real management question: who owns that phone in the first place? CompTIA gives you 3 deployment models, and they trade cost against control on a single dial.
Rank them by how much control the company keeps. At the top, COPE, corporate owned, personally enabled. The company buys it and allows some personal use so it keeps maximum control. In the middle, CYOD, choose your own device. The company still owns it, but you pick the model you like. At the bottom, bring your own device, your personal phone doing work, cheapest for the company and the least control.
And there's a myth sitting right on that bottom rung that I have to bust. The version going around says bring your own device is basically free money since employees buy the hardware, half true at best. You dodge the hardware bill, sure, but now company data sits on a phone you don't own, running who knows what apps, and containerization plus management on personal devices gets messy and gets pushback. The savings are real. So is the risk. That's a genuine trade-off, not a free lunch, and it's exactly the fight for the next scene.
And the last piece that ties the phone back to everything else. Remote wipe, lose the device, and from the same console you erase it, or just the work container, before anyone reads a thing. That one feature is why a lost phone is an inconvenience instead of a resignation letter, as long as the device was enrolled before it walked off. So that's the toolkit. Now the real argument, the one every IT shop actually has out loud. Should employees use their own phones, or should the company own them? Here's the fight every IT shop actually has, and there's real money and real risk on both sides. Do you let people use their own phones for work, or does the company own the devices? Kai argues company-owned, corporate-owned, personally enabled. Tiffany makes the strongest honest case for bring your own device. I'll steer it and land the verdict against what the standards actually say.
Company-owned, and I'll argue it on the numbers. When the company owns the phone, you get full mobile device management, guaranteed encryption, a controlled app list, and a clean remote wipe with no argument about someone's personal photos. In a regulated shop, healthcare, finance, defense, that control isn't a luxury, it's the compliance requirement. Picture a nurse who loses a phone holding 1,000 patient records. On a company-owned, encrypted, remote wipeable device, that's a bad afternoon and one wipe command. On an unmanaged personal phone, that's a reportable breach with real fines attached. You cannot prove you protected data on a device you never controlled, and the auditor only cares about what you can prove.
I want that control too. But the page and the parking lot disagree.
Go ahead, Tiffany, push on it.
Buying a phone for every employee is enormous money, and people already carry a perfectly good one. Bring your own device saves the hardware bill, and adoption is instant because nobody wants to haul two phones. And a modern container can wall off the work data cleanly on a personal phone. For a startup or a school district, company-owned isn't frugal, it's impossible. So the real answer depends on what you're protecting.
Tiffany, be precise for me. Are you saying bring your own device is better, or that it's the honest fit when the budget and the data both allow it?
The second one, clearly. I'm not saying own nothing. I'm saying match the model to the sensitivity of the data and to who realistically pays. Low sensitivity data, tight budget, personal devices with a real container and enforced management. That's not a cop-out. That's reading the actual situation.
Then we're closer than it sounded. My worry was never the phone, it was the proof. If bring your own device still means enforced management, encryption, and a wipeable container, I can live with it for ordinary data. My line is the regulated stuff, where you must be able to prove control, and only owning the device gives you that.
That's the honest split, and I'll take it. Own the regulated phones outright. Let the low-risk work ride on personal devices, with a real container and real management sitting behind it, not a policy nobody enforces.
Deal, as long as real controls isn't just a checkbox somebody clicked once and forgot.
So let me land it, and I'll ground it in the standard. NIST's Mobile Device Guidance 800-124 doesn't crown one model. It tells you to choose based on your risk, your data sensitivity, and your ability to enforce controls. So the verdict is a decision rule, not a winner. High sensitivity or regulated data goes corporate-owned, COPE or CYOD, where control is provable. Cost-sensitive, lower-risk work can go bring your own device, but only with real mobile device management, full device encryption, and containerization behind it. The mistake CompTIA punishes is picking a model on price alone and ignoring the data. Match the device model to the data, and to who pays. That's the whole answer.
And that ties the whole objective together. Strong encryption on the network, real identity for every user, and enforced control on every device. Miss any one layer, and the other two can't cover the gap.
That's 4.1 start to finish. The hotel jammed its guests because the air is shared and open by default. WPA3, enterprise identity, and mobile device management are how you take that air back on purpose, instead of hoping nobody's listening. Quick version of Objective 4.1. Wireless is dangerous because the signal's in the air for anyone to grab. WPA3 beats WPA2 because SAE kills offline guessing and protected management frames block the deauth attacks, so turn WPS off. And Enterprise 802.1x with Radius gives every user their own identity instead of one shared password.
The line I'd carry into the exam is the evil twin. It clones the network name and deauths you onto the fake to steal your login. The fix isn't hiding your network, it's certificate-based enterprise Wi-Fi plus protected management frames, because a clone can't fake the real server's certificate.
And the ports, because they're free points. Radius is UDP 1812 for authentication and 1813 for accounting. On mobile, remember bluejacking pushes junk at you and bluesnarfing steals from you. Two names, one letter apart.
My takeaway is the deployment models. Bring your own device, corporate-owned, personally enabled, and choose your own device trade cost against control, and there's no single right answer. Match the model to the sensitivity of the data. That's the one the exam rewards.
If this made wireless finally click, hit like and subscribe so the next objective lands in your feed. Lock this scene in and you'll walk into that wireless question on exam day already knowing the answer. We're building the entire SY0701 list into this one free series. And there are free practice questions for every objective at certs.professorerica.com.
Here's the one only you can answer. When you're on public Wi-Fi with something sensitive, do you switch to your cellular data, run a VPN, or just trust the padlock? Tell us in the comments, cellular, VPN, or padlock.
The footnotes are where the money hides. Read them.
Straight up, Kim, that was one of the cleaner episodes of the season. 9.5. This is Professor Erica. Thanks for watching and signing off.